Brownell, a former FERC commissioner, a former state commissioner, former chair of PG&E, and currently delighted to be serving on the board of Copper Labs. I'm here today with Dan Forman, who's the CEO of Copper Labs. And let me tell you for a minute why I'm so excited about copper. Compared to the 15, 20-year-old AMI technology, it's cheaper, it's easier to use, it's easier for the customer to access, it's simpler to deploy, it's faster to deploy. More importantly, it's a third of the cost and returns value in a year rather than the typical 5 years. So it's good for customers. If I were still a regulator, I would love this. And definitely it's good for climate change. So Dan, please tell me more about this.
Hey, thanks, Nora. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. So, what we're doing at Copper is unlocking real-time data from any gas, water, and electric meter with a radio in it. And so this is helping utilities to create a data-driven channel to engage the right consumers in those really critical moments that matter most to the grid. And the fact is, whether utilities are still doing drive-by meter reading or they've got the state-of-the-art smart grids, they're not good enough. The state-of-the-art smart grid tells you what happened yesterday in 15-minute intervals. Drive-by grids tell you what happened last month. Copper bridges that gap by unlocking real-time data from all of these meters and providing a new, as you say, low-cost and much more simple way to modernize legacy grids and take control of demand, because things are changing much more quickly than we're equipped to keep up with when you consider intermittent renewables, consumer-sided distributed energy resources like electric vehicle chargers. And if utilities can't see what's happening in real time at the grid edge, they can't manage it. And so copper's helping them better match supply with intermittent demand.
And Dan, I think what's really important is that in fact this works for gas and water as well. People say customers don't care, but in fact the issue of affordability looms large in all of those sectors. And when I look at the horrific droughts in the West or the shortages of gas in the Northeast, I think that customers deserve the opportunity, and we've demonstrated that, in fact, they can get information and they'll engage in saving those resources. So tell us what you've seen.
That's right. One of the things that we're doing is we're really leveling the playing field by delivering to the consumer the same usage data that the utility has always had. The difference is that we deliver it to both of them in real time. And so, our place in the world for consumers is to provide value, detect anomalies. So for example, if you're on track to double your gas bill this month, which a lot of folks are right now, it's better to know that partway into the month when you can still do something about it. Similarly, as you look to water, the real challenge here is that water is the least renewable among these resources, and yet you look at the way utilities have managed demand on the electric side, we have all these proven methods, no one's applied them to water. And so that's really one of the things that makes Copper unique, is that our devices are super simple for consumers to install. It doesn't care if it's a gas, water, or electric meter. It streams that data to the consumer in a mobile app in real time, the utility in real time, so that both of them can collaborate instead of being separated and, consumers just considered a ratepayer that has no place in this. Everybody needs to do their part. And if you think about the consumer value, why would they care about this? It's not to look at the phone all day and say, oh, here's what I'm using. It's to know when something goes wrong or there's an opportunity to save resources. So if you are flying blind and seeing a water bill, for example, only once every 30 days, and you have a leak, not only can it cause damage, it can cost a lot of money. All of these are easily addressable challenges that have not been met by most of the existing solutions that are out there.
Well, and I think more importantly, because I focus on affordability, not only is the technology itself cheaper, but the ability to actually save money. We've seen it in the gas markets where, given real-time data, people will participate. And when I look again in the West, particularly at those water issues, and I see two tiers of pricing. So people are being asked to save 25%. They have no idea what that 25% is or how to get there, nor do they have any ability to control the upper costs that happen when you use in excess of what you've been asked to. So I think we've seen it work. What can we do to help it work? What's the message that we want to send to people? Because I think it's also incredibly important for climate change, which is clearly right in front of us, and we're facing a winter that will really stress all parts of the nation. A recent North American Reliability Council said every single part of this country is going to be stressed this winter. So tell me how this will help.
Well, I agree, and that really gets to the point. We have a crisis, and regardless of where you want to point the finger on what's caused it, how it's evolving, we need to take action. And the way that the utilities have typically planned for changing and evolving grids, it's these long 10, 20-year cycles. We don't have that much time. And so we've got to find better, faster ways to do it instead of just, this is the way that we've always done it. Let's just keep on doing that. And so, as an example, not many utilities have done much on gas demand response. If you look to the Northeast, it's a critical issue this winter. And so we actually just last month published a first of its kind case study with National Grid showing that we were able to deliver an 18% peak load reduction during a severe winter storm. And so if you think about what's happened there, what happened in California this summer, where as the grid was reaching its limit and it was going to face a blackout, California sent an emergency text through that system saying, hey, we're going to have a blackout. If you don't curtail, lo and behold, people didn't want to have a blackout. Everybody took action. Now, if you flip that and think, what would happen if I'm doing this proactively rather than reactively and consistently providing consumers with actionable insights, things that help them to understand how consumption choices affect their bill, affect the planet, you can deliver very significant savings for the consumer and help build resiliency into these grids.
So, Dan, tell me what you think the issues are in getting this deployed. And I'd like you to say a little bit more about how quickly it can deploy, because typically these things, as you mentioned, get planned for years, but then it takes several years to get them to all of the customers who will need to access them. Tell me how copper is very different in that regard as well.
Yeah, it's a good point. And if you think about what, so-called AMI or smart grid is, what they're doing is deploying new meters and a new dedicated network to backhaul that data. The challenge is that's a mesh network that's like deploying a little dial-up network when there's huge broadband pipes everywhere. And so the challenge is that those networks only allow utilities to access that data the next day in 15-minute interval after they spend hundreds of millions of dollars and 5 to 7 years to deploy this technology. And they simply don't need to do that. And so, the lesson learned with copper was if you can unlock this data cost effectively and simply from dumb old legacy drive-by meters and even the newest smart meters and bring that back in real time over existing broadband networks, you can create load flexibility that lends to grid resiliency, equity, and more cost-effective bills for consumers. And so we started with this low-cost device that I showed you a little while ago that's easy for utilities to mail out. And what we've been doing for the last 3 years, based on the proven results that we've been able to deliver for gas, water, and electric utilities, is we've got a new version that's an outdoor pole-mounted, smart streetlight mounted version of this that a single device can get near real-time data from hundreds of meters without a consumer needing to install any hardware and without the cost of doing that. And so if you think about what that can enable, that can modernize legacy grids to be smarter than the newest smart grid for a fraction of the time and cost. And those are the types of solutions that we need if we're going to meet the moment to modernize grids, integrate all these new renewables, and in particular here in the West where we are, keep from running out of water. Because again, it's hard to drive changes in consumer behavior if you're not informing people on what the impact of the decision they're making is in that moment.
So if I were the mayor of a smart city, and there are lots of them, I think, working hard to change their local environments into something smarter, better, more efficient, and more environmentally friendly, I would really want to look at this.
Nora, that's a great question about the smart cities. We actually, one of our first deployments is a smart city project here in Colorado where they had trouble even getting permits to build this due to water rights. And so copper gets deployed in every home, informs consumers about electric, gas, and water use. And interestingly, meters indoor water and outdoor water separately. And so depending upon where the municipality is, there's a lot of different motivations and needs. For example, in the Northeast, it might be winter peaks. In the West, it could be summer peaks. It could be water shortages. And so I think a lot of these mayors have emerging incentives to find ways to better use these resources before they run out of them. And so, to that point, mayors are inclined to make different choices than regulated utilities. And I'm curious, going back 15 years, you were a regulator. You were on the front end of when AMI was rolling out, and I'm curious your perspective on whether that promise has been delivered.
I think we had all enormous hopes for AMI and what it could deliver. And for an old technology, it probably got us, I don't know, maybe 30% of the way there. But as we see every day, as we see with new EV technology and new phone technology and new software technology, things change. And so what copper can deliver compared to AMI is unbelievably more developed, more user friendly, and more helpful to every segment that touches it. So I appreciate the utilities took a lead, but again, we need to rethink how we manage regulatory processes and how we can take advantage and leverage these new technologies without sinking a lot of unrecoverable costs in technologies that don't deliver.
That's a great point. If you think about AMI or any metering infrastructure upgrades, they're 15, 20-year bets. And it's pretty hard to bet that you put really expensive electronics on the ground today, they're going to perform as well over 20 years as, to your point, software that gets smarter every day. Your phone gets upgraded every few years. And so we're trying to help utilities see that there is a way to flip that model, deploy the lowest cost sensor that they can, leverage the cloud infrastructure and existing broadband that gets smarter every day, is cost effective, so that we don't get locked into these same things again. And it's important to note that all of those AMI 1.0 deployments that happened in the early 2000s, they're coming up for a refresh. And we're hoping that we can help utilities see that there is a better path than repeating the exact same model again.
Well, and I think as a regulator, what I would look at is not only what it can do, but how much less expensive it is. And then I would encourage the utilities to redeploy that capital, because rate base is important. Either redeploy that capital into aging infrastructure, which is everywhere in our country, or frankly, for regulators to use more performance-based metrics in rewarding people who do the right thing and who absolutely deliver value to those customers. And let's be realistic. People perceive any change as a chance. This is proven technology. It is proven to work in Sterling Ranch, which I encourage everyone to go visit. It's worked in many places. So I think we need to get beyond relying on 20-year-old technology just to be safe, because we're missing way too many opportunities.
That's a really important point. And if you think about grid modernization budgets, 20 years ago, it might have made sense to spend the bulk of that on meters and networks to modernize, billing and operations from a metering perspective. We've got different challenges now. And whether it be resiliency, safety, or aging infrastructure, we're trying to help make sure that utilities have enough budget to address those more emergent challenges, and without saddling consumers with increasingly high bills. We've already got higher energy costs, and we've got to be really smart about where we spend money on new infrastructure.
Particularly, I'd like you to talk a little bit about how this empowers and enables EVs, which people are very concerned about the stress on the grid. They're very concerned about pricing, and they're very concerned about getting people on time of use rates so that we don't destabilize the grid and we make this more affordable for more people as the electric vehicle deployment itself continues to grow.
Yeah, it's an important point, and electric vehicles are critical not only to reducing emissions and helping us with some of these climate challenges, but they could be either a threat or a resource to utilities, depending upon how you look at it. And so with copper, we're able to have real-time visibility for utilities. We can, everything we get is whole home data directly from the meter. We can identify when someone, for example, is charging a level 2 EV charger and alert the utility so that they understand what the strain is on the grid, but also create that channel to reach out to someone and say, hey, you're charging your EV during peak hours. If you were to wait till after 9, for example, it might cost you half as much. You could use wind instead of coal. And early on in copper's journey, and we've been building this technology for more than 5 years, we would do testing with really friendly folks around town that are also, tech entrepreneurs, sophisticated folks. You'd be surprised the number of people that would come home on a peak day in the middle of the summer when HVAC is running full blast and go ahead and plug in that electric vehicle. And so when you actually turn ratepayers into collaborators, enable them with data, they can make better decisions that build this resiliency into the grid relative to what we saw in California last summer, what we were able to deliver in the Northeast on gas last winter.
So I think we really need to focus on the fact is that data is important to the utilities to manage their assets, whether they be water, gas, or electric. It's important to climate leaders because it has an enormous impact on our ability to address climate issues. And most importantly for me, it's really critical to consumers who are capable of making major decisions, who care about the environment, and who are facing all of these challenges of affordability, of climate change, and frankly, how to keep their families safe. So I'm excited, and I hope we'll have an opportunity to talk again.
Likewise, thank you. And the thing I would say to close is, we've talked about the fact that the electric utility industry has proven that through energy efficiency, demand response, there are ways to move that needle. It hasn't been applied to gas and water. We're seeking to help bring the same opportunities to those fields. And if you think about affordability and how to make sure that you're bringing all of the consumers in to help manage all these challenges, the answer is not to deploy a whole bunch of new capital that increases rates and doesn't deliver the promised benefits. The answer is to find the most efficient path to solve the challenge ahead of us. And that's what Copper's helping utilities do.
And I think we'll continue, and we'll also help those electric utilities who have demonstrated this works, that they can do even more, which frankly we need both for our economy and our environment. So thanks again, Dan. I'm excited to be working with you. I love visiting because every day you guys have a new idea.
Likewise. Thank you so much.